thank you for having me here this evening. It's really an honor to be, you guys are my kin. Anytime I get to have the pleasure to speak somewhere, we're all here for a reason. We're concerned about the direction of the country. And frankly, I got involved in the Tea Party movement 2 years ago yesterday in Indianapolis. I went to my first Tea Party rally. And with that, I just really hit the ground running. I got in it the reason all you guys are concerned about the country. And what I thought, I'd always had educated myself on the political events, national, even international, and locally certainly. And I did my part in voting dutifully. But like most other people, I thought it ended there, and I didn't really have a say as a private individual. So I complained. I'd yell at the TV. But back in the beginning of '09, I just had enough. I said to myself, you know, they're coming after my family, my business, which is my livelihood, and my country. And if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything. So I got involved. And the doors that have opened for me, I'm not quite sure how they have opened other than I believe, and most of the people I talk to agree, I think there's a hand greater than ours that is in this movement. And he's on our side. And I've asked to talk today on my efforts with Hoosiers for Conservative Senate. So I plan on doing that. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself and how I got to that point. But let me ask you, how many people here today are anxiously awaiting to vote for Senator Lugar next May? Good. Well, with Hoosiers for Conservative Senate, that is an initiative to, and let me actually read our mission statement and give you a little bit more about understanding on that. Our mission with Hoosiers for Conservative Senate is to ensure the United States senatorial representation of Indiana reflects conservative values and is in strict adherence with the Constitution of the United States as worded and originally intended by the writers of this sacred document. It's that simple. Now, our current senator, Senator Lugar, does not do that. He's not representative of that movement. So I didn't start Hoosiers for Conservative Senate. It found me, actually. And the bio, what might lead up to my introduction, really what I have done. I've just gotten involved. I'm like probably most of you in here. I've got other things. I've got to work for a living. I put over 40 hours a week in my business. I have family obligations. But beyond that, I have focused the last 2 years of my time to work in the Tea Party. And it's long hours and the pay's lousy, but the stakes are as high as they can possibly be. That's our country and our freedom. So I do it happily and readily, speaking at various groups, but in the various efforts that I've done over the last 2 years, I've been successful in many degrees. And just recently I stepped down as president and always was co-founder, but president of Hoosier Patriots. But I stepped down from that recently so I could focus more in other things and primarily Hoosiers for Conservative Senate. And that started back in October of last year. A woman out of Kosciuszko County, Warsaw, Indiana, named Monica Boyer called me. We never met, but she just called me and heard about me and said, hey, I got this idea. Would you be interested in an initiative, see if we could rally the consensus of the Tea Party in Indiana to try to defeat Senator Lugar? And I said, sure, let's talk. And other people joined in on that initial first few meetings. And then in January of this year, on January 22nd, up in Tipton County, there was 72 Tea Party groups represented from all over Indiana with about 160 leadership members in participation at a meeting, about 3.5-hour meeting. And there was general consensus that, yeah, we should work together, at least in this effort, to see if we can beat the senator. And it's not a coalition. There's been a little bit of I guess, leeriness of people saying, well, who's running the Tea Party? And no one person does, and that's correct. That's the beauty of it, because all of us here today are leaders within the movement, and the movement is strong because of that. If it's one or two leaders, you go after those two people, and that's how you kill a movement, and that's how the left would do it, and they are trying to destroy bigger name people within the Tea Party, more on a national level. So that's certainly not our intention, but it's a singular goal, and that is just to beat Senator Lugar and put a real conservative in there. So we were pretty honored and humbled by the amount of people that showed up on that meeting. It was a wintry, cold day, as you would expect in January. But leading up to that was a few things to know, kind of the background on how that meeting happened and what we've done since. In December, on December 13th, Monica and myself met with Senator Lugar in Indianapolis, downtown Indianapolis at the Marriott Hotel, which is very unprecedented for the senator to meet with two private individuals. And I don't know if you guys, when's the last time you've seen your senator? He doesn't come to Indiana. He is now because he's in trouble, but up until then, he didn't come. He came for fundraisers and stuff, but he didn't come to the counties. He didn't work to earn your vote and to represent Indiana. In fact, he owns property in Indiana, but he doesn't live in Indiana. He has no residence in Indiana. So that morning on December 13th, when he met us at the Marriott Hotel, he came down from his room, and I thought that was a little telling sign. He met with us, and he spent 2 hours with us, and we asked him some basic questions and concerns that we had. And one of them was the START Treaty, the support of the START Treaty, and that we didn't agree with that. The DREAM Act was another one. The Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And most importantly, his votes, the last two votes for the Supreme Court justices, that being Justice Sotomayor and Kagan. So what he did in the next 2 hours proceeded to tell us why he did that and why his votes were conservative. The START Treaty, we were informed, protects Indiana because it limits warheads aimed at not only our country, but our state. Never mind that he didn't adequately address what about the 10,000 tactical nukes that they have and we don't. What about those? It doesn't address those. What about China, North Korea, possibly Iran? What about those nukes? So we tie our hands at an old philosophy back from the 1980s, his legacy. And if you've been to his office in Washington, D.C., it's just practically wallpapered with what he did in the 80s. And it's not the 1980s anymore. It's a different world, and I'm afraid our senator hasn't left that world. He's too concerned about that legacy. And then the DREAM Act, we've been informed that that's just pretty much racist if you don't support that, because those guys that went, or men and women that served in our military, even though they came or were born in this country by illegal parents, that we should do that, and it's just a stepping stone to comprehensive immigration reform, which in my mind that's blanket amnesty for everyone. And we've been down that road back in the 80s, and you see where that's left us. So we weren't in agreement with that. And then the two Supreme Court justices, his thought on that, his reasoning was the Constitution does not give any senator the authority to challenge the president's votes. And he says, you read it, it's not in there, you can't do it. I said, well, whether it is or not, it also doesn't allow for two people on the Supreme Court to, one of them, that being Sotomayor, saying that she would use as a basis of her decision social justice. Social, what color of the skin, what gender they are, and so forth. And if you would recall, justice is blind. You've seen the statue and the scales and the blindfold. That's not in our Constitution. And then even more disturbing is Justice Kagan was quoted saying she would look to international law to base her decisions. Again, that's not the Constitution. So his argument didn't hold up. And basically in those 2 hours, he just pretty much gave us a commercial on how he pulled himself up from his own bootstraps. He worked hard on the farm and made something of himself. But unfortunately, none of our children are going to have that opportunity the way this country's going. They're not going to make it, because if they're going to do what the government tells them to do. So after that, we thought, okay, we went out, we tried to see if there was some common ground, and there's not. So it's time to go after him. Now, respectfully, but let's go after him. And that was in December 13th. We already had our meeting planned in late January. And then a week before that meeting, I got a very interesting call that came into my office, my business office, from Washington, D.C. And it was an individual that requested a meeting with myself and his boss. And with the preface of saying this guy really likes what the Tea Party is doing, and he'd like to help us out, help the Tea Party. And I was born at night, but not last night. And I was a little leery of that. But again, you'd be silly not to take that meeting, because you just don't know. Maybe this person was legitimate. So long story short, 2 days prior to that 22nd meeting in January, so on the 20th, I met with this individual in Indianapolis at a hotel bar at the airport. He flew in to see me. And we spent the next 2.5 hours talking about Senator Lugar. Go figure that. I kind of thought that might be the case. So individually, this person talked, I listened. And a very influential person, mind you. Very wealthy, very powerful individual. And they said that, or he said that, I want to talk to you about these issues that you guys have with Senator Lugar. And he goes through the same scenario that 1 month earlier we talked to the senator. Well, the START treaty, it's not a big deal because the Russians cheat. But so do we. That's what he said. He said, the DREAM Act, I don't know why you guys are upset with that. Do you realize how many unfilled jobs there are in this country? We don't have enough people to fill those jobs. And I was dumbfounded. I thought, what world are you living in? I mean, go look for a job right now. So, and that's not the only issue other than it's illegal, but that was his ration. And then he said to me, well, and the Supreme Court justices, well, yeah, we were wondering about that. But you know what? Yeah, we don't agree with him. But you don't agree with anybody in life. So, but we agree with him 87% of the time. So, you guys knock off Lugar, then we need to take the Senate back in 2012. We got to have it. So you guys knock off Lugar, and then what? A Democrat gets in? So that's just dumb. And he said, besides, that's going to cost $10 or $12 million to defend that seat if you guys go after him, when we could be spending that money somewhere else. He said it's hard to raise money in any climate, especially in this climate. Now, if you knew who this individual was, it's not going to be hard for him to raise money. But so I listened some more, and I thought, I was real early on in the conversation. I knew what it was about. So he said, you know what? He says the darn shame is there's some key Tea Party people here in Indiana. You guys could be a real value, actually. A few of you. He said, I have a big fundraiser at my place every year. A big fundraiser. Not your 20, 30 person fundraiser, but a big fundraiser. He said, you guys would get, a few of you I could invite. And you get to meet some really powerful people that you wouldn't meet otherwise, like Mitch McConnell and people from all over the United States. I thought, okay, there's the first bribe. And I didn't flinch. I mean, I'm not going to be bought, and certainly not for a party. So he talked a little bit more, kind of trying to lure me in a little bit more. So his last thing he said to me, he said, the real shame is that few of you Tea Party guys, do you understand how important you are to the conservative movement? I said, well, there's lots of us actually, but yeah, we do, because we are the conservatives and the Republicans are not, nor are the Democrats. And he said that there are so many positions, unfilled positions on senators and congressmen's staff, and some of you guys would go a long way to help out and bring that conservatism to that. So now it wasn't a direct offer, but it was insinuated he could make that happen if I wanted to. And I didn't bite on that, and then quickly the meeting ended. He was in a hurry at that point because I didn't bite. So that's who they're sending after us. That was one person. Now later, Monica was contacted by the Japanese embassy out of Washington, D.C. And that person flew into Indianapolis to meet with her. I'm wondering why we would go after Senator Lugar, such a fine, upstanding individual. So trust me, this is different. They're not used to it. They don't like it. But the fact of the matter is we've got to do this because he doesn't deserve any of our votes. He's not conservative. He doesn't even care about Indiana. He is and if you talk to him, he told us this in the December meeting, he's a United States Senator, period. He represents the United States. And no, he is a U.S. Senator, but he's our senator. And we should hold him accountable. Like any good employer, you will hold your employees accountable. And he's not acting in our best behalf or that of the country, so it's time to remove him. Like you would, if you want to save your business, you take care of a wayward employees. Same difference with him. So that was really led up to our meeting. Now our meeting, we had, as I said, about 72, I believe was the final count that actually came to that meeting. And with that, what we said, if we don't do this collectively, we have less of a chance to beat the senator, period. And even, frankly, as influential as the Tea Party is, I don't honestly believe that the Tea Party alone can defeat Senator Lugar. It's going to take people who don't associate themselves or don't actually consider themselves a Tea Party person. So we've got to reach everybody that we can possibly do so. So one of the plans that we've come up with, getting input from various people and I know this is, I didn't really come to bring, or be prepared to bring graphics, but we decided to build a house or a 4-story structure, and the foundation of this Hoosiers for Conservative Senate is just that. It's a foundation, it's unity. If the Tea Parties will work together on this one cause, we have a very good chance of defeating the senator. If we don't, we have less of a chance.